Ethan Cole had always dreamed of seeing the stars up close, not as tiny dots in a telescope but as real worlds waiting to be explored. The universe was vast, and humanity was only beginning to scratch its surface. Now, he stood on the surface of Lyrian, a planet unlike any other he had ever seen. The air shimmered faintly with golden particles, and the forest around him seemed alive, with crystals that reflected sunlight in colors that didn't exist on Earth. Floating mountains drifted lazily in the sky, held aloft by forces Ethan could barely begin to understand. He had been sent as part of a research mission, one of the first humans allowed to study Lyrian. Reports had described the planet's beauty, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Every step he took on the soft, crystalline soil sent tiny sparks flying. The wind carried a fragrance unlike anything on Earth, sweet but not cloying, and the sound of the forest was a gentle melody of rustling leaves and distant, musical tones that seemed to respond to his presence. Ethan had been exploring for hours, recording samples and taking notes. He had expected to find some intelligent life, perhaps animals with unusual behaviors, but nothing prepared him for what he saw next. Moving gracefully among the crystalline trees was a figure unlike anything he had ever imagined, tall and luminous, with skin that seemed to glow softly in the golden light. The being had eyes like liquid silver, reflecting everything around her. Her hair shimmered like strands of light, and her robes moved as if woven from the very air itself. Ethan froze. He knew immediately that this was not an ordinary creature. This was royalty. An alien princess. The stories he had read about Lyrian had hinted at intelligent life, but nothing so breathtaking. He felt a rush of both fear and awe. His training urged him to stay calm and observe, but part of him wanted to run forward and speak, to ask her name, to understand her world. The princess noticed him. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then she spoke, not with words, but directly in his mind. "You are human," she said, her voice gentle but clear. "I can sense your heart." Ethan stumbled back, trying to process what had happened. Telepathy? He had studied alien communication, but experiencing it was entirely different. He focused, forcing himself to calm down. "Yes," he answered, speaking aloud, unsure if she could hear him that way. "I am Ethan. I mean no harm. I come in peace." There was a pause, and then a faint smile appeared on her face. "I am Lyra. You are brave to come here alone. Many of your kind would not survive the forests of Lyrian." Ethan swallowed, feeling both nervous and exhilarated. I wanted to see your world. It's incredible." He gestured vaguely, but Lyra already understood. Her expression softened. For hours, they communicated. Words were not enough. Images, feelings, and ideas passed effortlessly between them. Ethan showed her the stars as humans saw them, the ships that could travel between them, the cultures of Earth. Lyra shared the history of Lyrian, the art of her people, their reverence for nature, and the energies that flowed through their planet. Ethan felt a connection he had never experienced with anyone before. There was understanding, curiosity, and an undeniable warmth that made his chest tighten. Lyra, too, seemed intrigued by him, fascinated by the way humans could invent, adapt, and dream. They spoke of science, philosophy, and even humor. Ethan laughed when Lyra tried to mimic a human joke, and she laughed at the sound of his amusement, a musical, vibrating sound that echoed through the crystal forest. As the sun began to set, casting the sky in deep purples and pinks, a sudden tremor shook the ground. Ethan instinctively grabbed Lyra's arm as a large branch, dislodged by the tremor, fell toward them. She reacted instantly, using her agility to leap aside, but the ground under Ethan gave way, and he slipped toward a narrow crystal bridge over a deep chasm. "Ethan!" Lyra's voice filled his mind with urgency. He tried to climb, but his hand slipped. The edge was sharp and jagged. He could feel panic rising. Then, just as he was about to lose his grip completely, He felt Lyra's hand on his shoulder, not pushing him, not pulling, but steadying, sharing strength. With her guidance, he managed to scramble back onto solid ground. They both stood there, catching their breath, hearts racing. Ethan looked at her, and in that quiet, starlit moment, he realized something profound. I wish I could marry you," he whispered, almost unconsciously. The words slipped out before he could think to stop them. Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the fading light. For a long moment, she said nothing, just looked at him. Then she smiled softly, the kind of smile that carried warmth, understanding, and a promise of something more. Ethan didn't know what to make of it. Did she understand him? Did she even care? But before he could ask, the storm around them intensified. The golden air grew turbulent, the wind carrying sharp crystal shards. Lyra took his hand, and this time, she guided him through the forest, moving with a grace that defied gravity. They reached a sheltered glade, where the storm's fury softened. Ethan felt a sense of relief, but also a strange kind of hope. Meeting Lyra had changed everything. He had come to Lyrian as a researcher, a visitor, an observer, but now, he felt part of something larger. He felt connected, not just to Lyra, but to the planet, to the possibilities of the universe. Over the next few days, Ethan and Lyra explored the hidden wonders of Lyrian together. She showed him the crystal waterfalls that sang when the wind passed through them, the bioluminescent flora that glowed in rhythmic patterns, and the floating mountains that held secrets of the planet's energy. Ethan marveled at everything, but more than that, he marveled at her. Every movement, every glance, every thought shared between them felt profound. They talked about humans and Lyrians, about the differences in culture, and the challenges of understanding each other. Ethan learned that Lyrians lived in harmony with the energies of their planet, drawing from it without taking too much. Humans, he explained, were still learning, still experimenting, sometimes recklessly, but capable of incredible creativity and empathy. One evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the horizon, Ethan spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if this is possible, but I wish I could be part of your world. Not just as a visitor, but as someone who belongs." Lyra's eyes softened, and she reached out, placing her hand over his. "Ethan, your heart is strong. Your courage and kindness are unlike anything my people have seen. Perhaps there is a place for you here, but time will tell. First, you must understand our ways, and we must understand yours." Ethan nodded, feeling both relief and excitement. This was only the beginning. He had come to Lyrian seeking knowledge, but he had found something far greater: connection, respect, and the first sparks of love that transcended worlds. As the night deepened, they sat together under the shimmering sky, speaking silently through shared thoughts, learning each other's hopes and fears. Ethan realized that humanity's strength was not just in technology or bravery, but in the ability to connect, to care, and to dream. And Lyra, regal and luminous, seemed to recognize that same truth. Seeing in him a reflection of the best of humanity, the stars above seemed to shine brighter that night, as if the universe itself acknowledged the bond forming between them. Ethan knew challenges lay ahead, different cultures, skeptical councils, and dangers from beyond their skies. But for the first time in his life, he felt ready to face them all. He looked at Lyra and whispered again, "I hope one day you will say yes." She turned to him, her silver eyes glinting in the starlight, and for the first time, Ethan saw a glimmer of something he had never expected: understanding, acceptance, and perhaps even the promise of a future neither of them could yet imagine. And in that moment, under the strange, golden skies of Lyrian, Ethan realized that humanity's place in the universe was not just to explore, but to connect, to inspire, and to love. After the storm passed, the forest of Lyrian seemed calmer, almost welcoming. Ethan felt a strange sense of belonging, as if the planet itself had accepted him. Lyra guided him through hidden paths and luminous groves, showing him the wonders that only Illyrian could know. Crystal flowers that sang when touched, rivers that flowed with liquid light, and stones that held memories of the past, all amazed him. But the wonder was nothing compared to the presence of Lyra beside him. Despite his admiration, Ethan knew that he could not yet be truly accepted. Lyrian's people were cautious, and the Council of Elders guarded their traditions closely. Word of his arrival had reached the capital city, and soon he received a summons from the council. Nervous but determined, Ethan followed Lyra to the Great Palace, a towering structure built of translucent crystal that shimmered in the sunlight. Inside, the council awaited. Tall, regal beings, each radiating the quiet power of their kind, scrutinized him with piercing eyes. Ethan bowed, his heart racing. Lyra stayed beside him, her presence calming, a silent assurance that he was not alone. "You are human," one elder said, her voice calm but firm. "And humans are unpredictable. Your species is known for bravery, but also for recklessness. If you are to stay among us, you must prove that you understand our ways." Ethan nodded, feeling both the weight of responsibility and a spark of excitement. "I will do whatever is required," he said. Lyra stepped forward, her silver eyes meeting his. "The council will give you trials. They will test your mind, your heart, and your courage. I will guide you, but you must succeed on your own." The first trial was one of intelligence. Ethan was led to a chamber filled with floating crystal puzzles, glowing with an inner light. The challenge was to align them in a sequence that would unlock the next room. At first, he hesitated, unsure how the crystals responded to thought and intention rather than touch. But he remembered his training, the countless hours of studying logic, patterns, and problem-solving. Slowly, he began to experiment, watching how the crystals moved in response to his focus. Hours passed, but Ethan persisted. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his fingers ached from holding shapes in the air. But finally, with a combination of observation and intuition, the final crystal aligned, the chamber brightened, and the door opened. The council's gaze was approving, and Ethan felt a surge of pride. Lyra smiled at him, a small nod of encouragement. The second trial tested his compassion. He was led to a simulated village, where holographic representations of Lyrian citizens faced hardships, sickness, hunger, and fear. The challenge was to help them using only his knowledge, empathy, and communication skills. Ethan moved among them, offering solutions, comforting the distressed, and finding ways to share limited resources. He realized that understanding the needs of others required patience, creativity, and a willingness to listen. Lyra watched silently, occasionally whispering guidance in his mind. "See their needs, not just the problem," she said. "Feel their fear, and offer more than words." By the end of the trial, the holograms smiled and expressed gratitude. The council nodded in approval. Ethan had demonstrated not only his intelligence but his ability to care, to connect, and to understand the hearts of others, a quality humans sometimes overlooked, but one that resonated deeply with Lyrian culture. The third trial was the most dangerous. Ethan was led to a canyon where fierce, native creatures prowled. They were large, fast, and intelligent, testing the limits of anyone who entered. The challenge was to retrieve a crystal orb from the center of the canyon, without harming the creatures or himself. Ethan's heart pounded as he stepped onto the rocky terrain, the creature's eyes gleaming from the shadows. He remembered his training in survival and observation. Slowly, he studied the creatures, noticing their patterns, how they communicated, how they reacted to movement and sound. Instead of rushing, he moved with caution, using patience and empathy rather than force. He mimicked their calls, avoided threatening gestures, and gradually made his way to the orb. When he picked it up, the creatures did not attack. Instead, they watched him with curiosity before retreating into the shadows. Lyra appeared beside him once he returned, her eyes filled with admiration. "You are brave," she said. "But more than that, you understand life beyond your own. That is what makes a human special." The council met again, and for the first time, they spoke in a tone of cautious respect. "You have proven your intelligence, compassion, and courage. You show potential for understanding our world. But Lyrian faces a threat beyond these trials. Your ingenuity may soon be tested in ways no trial can prepare you for." Ethan listened carefully. He had already sensed tension in the distant mountains. Strange energy readings had appeared during his early scans, and the wildlife seemed more alert, as if aware of an approaching danger. Lyra explained that a hostile faction from a neighboring star system had been eyeing Lyrian for its resources and unique energies. "They will come for our planet," she said, her voice steady but tinged with concern. "And we may not survive without help." Ethan felt a surge of determination. Humans had always faced threats, and though the universe was vast and unknown, he knew that ingenuity, courage, and teamwork could overcome even the greatest odds. "Then, we will face them together," he said. "I will help protect your world." Lyra nodded, her expression a mix of relief and hope. "Your heart is brave, Ethan. But this is no longer a trial. This is real. The lives of my people, my home, depend on what we do next." The days that followed were filled with preparation. Ethan learned to adapt human strategies to Lyrian's unique environment, teaching the soldiers to use natural energy currents in innovative ways, to build defenses from crystal formations, and to think beyond conventional tactics. The Lyrians were amazed at his ability to improvise and his quick understanding of their energy-based technology. Lyra trained alongside him, guiding him in ways only a Lyrian could, teaching him to sense energy flows, to anticipate movement, and to trust intuition as much as logic. They laughed together when he stumbled, corrected himself, or tried to mimic Lyrian combat moves. Their bond grew stronger, forged through shared challenges and quiet moments under the glowing sky. One evening, while monitoring distant readings of the approaching faction, Ethan sat with Lyra near a crystal river. The water glowed softly, illuminating their faces. "I never imagined I would feel this way," Ethan said softly. "Being here, learning from you, seeing your world, it changes everything." Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting the sparkling river. "You have shown us humans are more than what we feared. Your courage, your care, your mind, it inspires. And yet, your heart, it is honest, unafraid, and true. That is rare among any species." Ethan's chest tightened. I want to be part of your world. Not just as a visitor, but as someone who belongs, who helps, who stands with you." Lyra reached out, holding his hand in hers. "Perhaps one day, you will. But first, we must face what is coming. Your strength will be tested not just by trials, but by fire and danger. Are you ready, Ethan?" He nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "I am ready. I will do whatever it takes to protect you and your people." The next morning, scouts reported that the hostile faction had entered Lyrian's outer regions. Their ships were strange, angular, and fast, bristling with weapons. They began to move through the forests, harvesting resources and laying traps for anyone who approached. Lyrian's soldiers mobilized, and Ethan worked alongside them, offering strategies and guidance. He realized that humanity's advantage was creativity, the ability to think outside the obvious. He suggested using the energy currents of Lyrian's rivers to create barriers, setting traps that would confuse and redirect the enemy, and coordinating attacks, using synchronized signals through the natural light patterns of the forest. The Lyrians were impressed. They had never seen a species combine courage, intelligence, and imagination in such a way. As they implemented Ethan's plans, he noticed Lyra watching him with a mixture of pride and something deeper. Something unspoken yet profound. Even as danger approached, the bond between them grew stronger. They shared moments of quiet reflection, talking about hopes, fears, and dreams. Ethan felt a sense of purpose, not just in defending Lyrian, but in proving humanity's worth to a species that had once viewed humans with caution. For the first time, he understood what Lyra had said about his heart. It was not just bravery that mattered, but the willingness to care, to adapt, and to think beyond oneself. Humans had survived in countless environments, faced countless challenges, and always found ways to rise above. And now, on this alien world, he was beginning to prove that truth once again. As the sun set on the crystalline horizon, casting long shadows across the forest, Ethan and Lyra stood together, ready to face the trials that were no longer tests, but real threats. The human had shown intelligence, compassion, and courage in controlled challenges, but now, the universe itself would test him in ways neither of them could yet imagine. And yet, Ethan felt no fear. For the first time, he knew that humans were not just survivors, they were innovators, allies, and protectors. And with Lyra by his side, he was determined to show that humanity's strength went beyond Earth, beyond planets, beyond stars. The story of the human in Lyrian was only beginning, and the trials of heart, mind, and courage would soon turn into a battle that could decide the fate of a world. The day the hostile fleet entered Lyrian's skies, the atmosphere of the planet changed instantly. The golden sunlight seemed dimmer. Shadows stretched longer, and even the forests grew tense, as if the planet itself could sense the danger. Ethan stood on a cliff overlooking the valley below, ships moving silently across the sky, their dark hulls contrasting sharply with the vibrant colors of Lyrian. He could feel the energy of the planet pulsing beneath his feet, a living force that Lyra had taught him to sense. Lyra appeared beside him, her presence calm yet commanding. "They are unlike anything we have faced before," she said. "Their technology is designed to destroy quickly and take what they want. But humans think differently. That is your strength, Ethan." Ethan nodded. He had spent days studying the terrain, the currents of energy in the forests and mountains, and the behavior of Lyrian's creatures. He knew that direct confrontation would be disastrous. The enemy had superior numbers and weapons, but humans were clever. They could adapt, improvise, and use the environment to their advantage. The first wave of the attackers moved toward the forest, attempting to cut off Lyrian's energy sources. Ethan quickly directed the Lyrian soldiers to use crystal formations to confuse and trap the enemy. By reflecting sunlight and channeling energy beams, they created illusions of additional forces. The enemy faltered, unsure of the terrain and its unpredictable properties. Ethan watched closely, his mind racing, anticipating their next moves. Lyra fought alongside him, her movements precise and elegant. Energy arcs flared from her hands, disarming and disabling attackers without causing unnecessary harm. Ethan marveled at her skill, but he also noticed the small glances she gave him, an unspoken reassurance that they faced this together. As the battle intensified, Ethan realized that the enemy relied heavily on standard tactics, expecting predictable responses. Humans, however, thrived in unpredictability. He suggested using the floating mountains to their advantage. By creating narrow paths and manipulating the energy flows along the cliffs, they could funnel the enemy ships into traps. The Lyrians implemented his strategy, and slowly, the tide of battle began to shift. During a particularly tense moment, Ethan and a small group of soldiers found themselves surrounded in a narrow canyon. The enemy had anticipated their movement, and there seemed no escape. Ethan's mind raced. He remembered Lyra's lessons about sensing energy currents. By focusing, he detected subtle vibrations in the canyon walls, energy flows that could amplify movement if used correctly. He shouted instructions to the soldiers, guiding them to position themselves along the crystal walls. Using carefully timed energy pulses, they created a shockwave that disoriented the attackers, allowing Ethan and his team to escape. The Lyrians were astonished. They had never thought of using their planet's natural energy in such a strategic way. Ethan's human ingenuity had turned a trap into an advantage. Meanwhile, Lyra led a group of her most skilled warriors in a separate skirmish. She moved like a force of nature, deflecting attacks and protecting civilians. Yet even in the chaos, she sent mental images to Ethan, communicating the enemy's weaknesses and positions. Together, they coordinated strikes across the battlefield, blending human creativity with Lyrian mastery. As the battle continued, Ethan noticed a massive ship approaching the capital city. It was larger than any they had seen, bristling with weapons and energy disruptors. Its arrival could tip the battle in favor of the enemy. Ethan knew he had to act quickly. He devised a plan that relied on speed, timing, and Lyrian energy flows. He called for a group of fast-moving Lyrian ships and instructed them to create a diversion near the canyon while he led a small team directly toward the massive ship. Using energy pulses amplified by the floating mountains, they could destabilize the ship's shields long enough for a targeted strike. It was risky, but Ethan trusted his plan. Lyra joined him, her energy flowing in harmony with his commands. Together, they guided the ships, moving with precision and speed. Ethan felt a thrill of exhilaration and fear, the same feeling he had always chased as an explorer. But this was different. This was not about discovery, but protection, about saving a world and the people he had come to care for deeply. The strike was successful. The massive ship shuddered, its energy shields collapsing, and it was forced to retreat. The enemy forces were thrown into disarray, their strategy disrupted by human creativity and Lyrian adaptability working together. Cheers erupted among the defenders, but Ethan knew the battle was not yet over. He continued to coordinate small strikes, guiding Lyrian units to anticipate the enemy's moves, using decoys, traps, and clever maneuvers. The attackers, confident at first, began to retreat under the relentless pressure. The Lyrians had never fought like this before, and it was clear that the humans' presence had changed the course of the battle. During a brief pause in the fighting, Ethan and Lyra met in the center of the city. The streets were littered with debris, but civilians were safe, thanks to their combined efforts. Ethan looked at her, seeing not just a princess, but a warrior, a guide, and a friend who had become much more than that. "You did this," Lyra said softly, her silver eyes reflecting relief and admiration. "Without your strategies, your understanding of energy, your mind, we might not have survived." Ethan shook his head. "We did this together. Lyrians are incredible fighters. And you led us with courage and wisdom. I just found ways to think differently." Lyra smiled. "Different is good. Different wins battles that the expected cannot." As night fell, the enemy finally began to retreat, leaving Lyrian battered but unbroken. The golden forests glowed softly under the twin moons, a sign that the planet itself was healing. Ethan walked with Lyra to a high overlook, surveying the aftermath. Despite the destruction, he felt a sense of pride and awe. Humanity had proven its worth, not through sheer strength, but through creativity, intelligence, and heart. "I never thought humans could do this," Lyra said, her voice quiet, almost reflective. "I feared your recklessness, your impulsiveness. But you see possibilities where others see obstacles. That is rare." "Unrare." Ethan smiled, feeling warmth in his chest. "Humans survive by thinking, adapting, and caring. That's what we do best. And I care about this world. About you. More than I can explain." Lyra turned to him, her expression softening. "Ethan, you have shown not just your mind, but your heart. That is why you belong here, even if others may not understand yet." For the first time, Ethan felt a deep sense of belonging. He had come to Lyrian as an outsider, an explorer, a visitor. But now, he was more than that. He was a protector, an ally, and perhaps, in time, something more to Lyra. In the days following the battle, the Lyrian Council held a special assembly. The elders, once skeptical, now regarded Ethan with respect. They had witnessed not only his intellect and courage, but his compassion and ability to inspire others. "Humans are capable of more than we believed," one elder said. "Through him, we have seen the strength of a species unbound by fear driven by heart and mind together. Ethan's presence had changed their perspective on humans. They began discussions about potential alliances, the sharing of knowledge, and the blending of strategies that could benefit both worlds. Lyra stood proudly by his side, their hands brushing occasionally, a quiet signal of trust and connection. One evening, as they walked through the city, still scarred from battle but alive with renewed hope, Ethan spoke quietly. "Lyra, I have always wanted to be part of your world, to be more than a visitor. Today, I hope you see that I can help, protect, and belong." Lyra paused, looking at him with an intensity that made his heart skip a beat. "Ethan, I have seen your courage, your mind, and your heart. You are unlike any human I have known. Perhaps it is time to consider more than survival, more than trials. Perhaps it is time to consider the future, together." Ethan's chest tightened. "Lyra, do you mean?" She smiled, reaching for his hand. "Yes, perhaps it is time." In that moment, the bond between human and Lyrian deepened, not just through battle and strategy, but through understanding, respect, and the beginnings of love. Humanity had proven its strength, not through domination, but through ingenuity, heart, and the courage to act when it mattered most. As the twin moons rose over the healing forests, Ethan realized that this was only the beginning. Challenges would come again, but he now understood something vital. Humans were remarkable because they could think, adapt, care, and connect. With Lyra by his side, he felt ready for anything. The story of Lyrian and humanity was no longer a tale of strangers. It was a story of allies, of hearts and minds meeting across worlds, and of the extraordinary potential that arose when humans faced the universe with courage and hope. And as he stood beside Lyra, looking out over the city and the forests bathed in moonlight, Ethan knew that whatever the future held, humanity had earned its place not just on Earth, not just among the stars, but in the hearts of those who had once doubted it. The days after the battle were filled with rebuilding, healing, and reflection. The forests of Lyrian slowly regained their gentle hum, and the city shimmered with renewed light as crystal structures repaired themselves, guided by the energy of the planet. Ethan walked alongside Lyra, feeling a sense of calm he had not known since arriving. Despite the dangers they had faced, he felt proud not just for surviving, but for helping a civilization see the strength of humanity. The Lyrian Council had invited him to participate in discussions about the future. His advice, strategies, and perspective had been invaluable. And the elders now recognized humans as allies, rather than unknown strangers. Ethan marveled at how quickly trust could grow when actions spoke louder than words. Yet even amid recovery, tension lingered. Scouts reported that small enemy units remained near the borders, attempting minor raids. It was clear that Lyrian's enemies had not given up, though their confidence had been shaken. Ethan understood that vigilance was necessary, but he also knew that fear could not dominate. Humans thrived in adversity because they adapted and took responsibility for what they could control. Lyra walked with him through a crystalline garden, the flowers glowing softly in response to their presence. She had fought with him, learned from him, and now walked beside him as a friend and equal. Ethan looked at her, feeling an emotion that went beyond admiration. "Lyra," he said quietly, "I have seen so much of your world, fought alongside your people, and learned what makes Lyrians strong. I want to help build a future, not just defend it, but I also want to be part of your life, truly." Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting the light of the glowing flora. "Ethan, you have shown more than skill or courage. You have shown patience, empathy, and wisdom. You think, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. That is rare, even among my people." He swallowed, feeling hope rising in his chest. "Then, will you accept me? Not as a visitor, not as a soldier, but as someone who belongs here?" Lyra smiled, a soft and radiant expression. "Yes, Ethan." You have earned a place here, in Lyrian, and in my heart. Ethan felt a rush of joy, a warmth that filled him entirely. The danger and struggle had brought them together. But it was the understanding, respect, and shared experience that had created a bond neither could deny. The next challenge came from the remnants of the hostile faction. Though weakened, they had regrouped at the edges of Lyrian's territory. Attempting a coordinated attack, the Lyrians prepared for defense. But this time, Ethan's role was different. He was not just a strategist or a fighter, he was a leader, trusted and respected by both humans and Lyrians alike. He quickly devised a plan that combined both species' strengths. Humans and Lyrians would work together, using a combination of technology, energy manipulation, and natural terrain to create an almost impenetrable defense. Ethan coordinated patrols, energy traps, and ambushes, while Lyra led the defenders in direct engagement. The battle began at dawn. The enemy's ships approached cautiously, wary of the traps that Ethan had suggested. When they advanced, they were met with a coordinated counterattack. Energy currents redirected them, illusionary duplicates confused their sensors, and clever positioning forced them into narrow passes where Lyrian and human forces could strike with precision. Ethan fought alongside the Lyrians, guiding small units to take advantage of weak points and unexpected opportunities. He was tireless, moving from point to point, making split-second decisions, and improvising as the situation changed. Humans had a talent for thinking differently, for seeing solutions where others saw dead ends. And today, that talent saved a world. Lyra's presence was everywhere. She inspired her people, boosted morale, and wielded her energy with both power and finesse. Together, she and Ethan were like two halves of a whole, each complementing the other's strengths. Civilians watched from safe vantage points, marveling at the coordination and bravery displayed by the Allies. Hours passed, and the tide of the battle turned decisively in favor of the defenders. The enemy, demoralized and unable to adapt to the unpredictable strategies, began to retreat. One by one, their ships were disabled or driven back, until the skies above Lyrian were clear once more. The victory was not without cost. Some of Lyrian's forests bore scars, and a few lives had been lost. Yet the planet had survived, stronger for having been tested. The council met again, formally recognizing Ethan's role and declaring him an honorary protector of Lyrian. They spoke of alliances, the sharing of knowledge between humans and Lyrians, and the importance of trust, courage, and ingenuity in facing future challenges. That evening, Ethan and Lyra walked through the city together, now illuminated by crystal lanterns that reflected soft colors across the streets. Children played, laughter echoed, and the sense of relief was almost tangible. The people of Lyrian looked at humans differently now, seeing not strangers, but allies capable of brilliance, compassion, and loyalty. Ethan stopped near a reflective pool, watching the twin moons shimmer on its surface. Lyra stood beside him, her hand brushing his. "You have changed perceptions, Ethan, not just with your strategies, but with your heart. That is what makes humanity extraordinary," she said. He looked at her, feeling a depth of emotion that words struggled to capture. "And you have changed me, Lyra. Your courage, your wisdom, your kindness. I have never met anyone like you." She smiled, her hand gently squeezing his. "Then let us shape the future together. Lyrian and Earth, humans and Lyrians, working side by side. There is much to learn from each other, much to explore, and much to protect." In the following days, plans were made for cultural exchanges, scientific collaboration, and shared training between humans and Lyrians. Ethan was not just a visitor. He was a teacher, a learner, and a bridge between worlds. His presence symbolized what humans could offer: intelligence, creativity, and heart, all working in harmony with the strength and wisdom of an alien civilization. Lyra and Ethan also began preparing for a ceremony that would signify their bond. It would not be a wedding in the human sense, nor in the Lyrian sense alone, but a combination of both cultures, a celebration of unity, trust, and mutual respect. It was symbolic, representing more than just love between two beings. It symbolized the union of worlds, the promise of shared futures, and the triumph of courage and heart. On the day of the ceremony, the skies of Lyrian glowed with unusual brilliance. Citizens gathered, humans and Lyrians alike, sharing stories, laughter, and music. Ethan stood beside Lyra, feeling the energy of the planet, the pulse of life around him, and the deep connection that had grown through trials, battles, and understanding. The ceremony was simple yet profound. Symbols of both cultures were combined. Words of hope and unity were spoken. And the bond between Ethan and Lyra was recognized by all. When Lyra took his hand and placed it in hers, it was more than an agreement between two hearts. It was a recognition that humanity had earned its place among the stars, through courage, ingenuity, and love. As the twin moons rose again, casting their silver light across the forests and crystal towers, Ethan and Lyra looked out over the world they had helped protect. The forests glimmered, the rivers glowed softly, and the people moved with confidence and hope. Humanity had proved that its strength was not just in survival, but in connection, creativity, and courage. Ethan turned to Lyra, feeling a sense of peace he had never known. "I never imagined this when I left Earth," he said softly, "but I know now. Humans can rise to challenges, not just for ourselves, but for others too. And I am proud to be here, with you, on this planet." Lyra smiled, her silver eyes reflecting his determination and hope. "And we are proud of you, Ethan. You have shown us that humans are more than explorers. They are allies, innovators, and protectors. With hearts like yours, we can face any challenge the universe sends." They stood together in silence for a moment, feeling the energy of the planet, the warmth of the people around them, and the bond that had grown through trials and triumphs. The challenges of Lyrian had been many, but through them, humans had proven their worth, not by strength alone, but through thought, heart, and courage. As the night deepened, Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Lyrian would face new challenges. The universe would bring new tests, but humanity had earned its place. They had shown that no matter the distance, the differences, or the dangers, humans could rise above, adapt, and inspire. And as he held Lyra's hand, feeling her warmth and strength, Ethan whispered once more, "I am home." Lyra squeezed his hand in return, her voice gentle but firm in his mind. "And so are you, Ethan. And so is humanity." Under the twin moons and the glowing forests, a new chapter began for Lyrian, for humanity, and for the bond between worlds. It was a story of courage, of ingenuity, and of heart. A story that proved humans were extraordinary, capable of connecting, protecting, and rising above even the greatest challenges. Ethan and Lyra stood together, looking toward the horizon, knowing that the universe was vast, full of unknowns. And yet, with courage, intelligence, and heart, humans could face it all. The stars above seemed brighter that night, as if acknowledging the truth. Humanity had earned its place, and love, respect, and collaboration would light the way for generations to come.